Well, hey there. Where do we even begin? You, me, and everyone else knows about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the massive hit from 2025 that will more than likely win a few awards as we get closer to the end of the year. Games have become, at least for me, a bit of an emotional roller coaster. As a kid, games were just fun. And there are plenty of games out there if you just want outright fun. But over the last, I'd say 15 years, we've received more and more games that just want to tug at your heartstrings, get your feelings all mixed up, and sometimes make you ponder the meaning of life and love. Creativity in the gaming industry is seemingly at its peak. We've had some pretty rough times here and there as well though, as we always will, because it's not always sunshine and rainbows, and I think for me, over the years, I've enjoyed the more thought-provoking and meaningful games. At least more so than the ones that try to give me just outright joy. Don't get me wrong, I do love a good Astrobot and others like it. But maybe it's just because I'm getting a little older, but as someone who is turning 32 next year, the story of Expedition 33 felt a little closer to home than it might for others. Also, as someone who struggles with loss and just overwhelming emotions on occasion, I can't tell you how much this game meant to me. To not only open my eyes to other perspectives outside of my own, but also to live more in the moment. Enjoy life, because it's not gonna last forever. So here's to Expedition 33. I hope you enjoyed this review of one of the best games ever made. So let's begin. Coming across such a wonderful game that is for one on Game Pass, but also only $50. Now I say that knowing that Silksong just came out for $20, but also the scope of this game and how many people worked on it, I would gladly, just like I would for Team Cherry with Hollow Knight, hand them all of my dollars. Indie games seem to be where the magic is, and as long as they are less than $70, it's always gonna make me happy. Now $50 is not cheap though, so if you need to get this game on sale, I totally understand, but just know that developers sometimes deserve the full price of their games. And this is one of them. Now, I played it initially on Game Pass, but then I bought the game after because I love the games industry and will forever pay for the things that I enjoy. There are many games I've even bought multiple copies for, sometimes a digital and physical version, because it's either that good of a game or I want to see the developer succeed more than anything else. So know before going into this, it's worth every single fucking dollar, and I don't say that lightly. Now moving into the meat of this review, firstly, I have to mention spoilers. The game has been out for a bit, so I feel okay speaking about spoilers on this, but for the love of God, if you have not experienced this game, then go do so. As I say with all of these reviews, if you can't afford to spend the time or the money on it, then at least watch someone else play through it, because it is very much worth it. During this review, we'll be discussing pretty much the entire main story, characters, and gameplay, and anything else that you could really consider a spoiler. I understand that some people might have not had the opportunity to complete this game or see most of what it has to offer, so now is your time to bow out and come back when you've seen it through to the credits. I did do a bit of the side content, so I'll be discussing just a very small portion of that here, and although this game also has parts that are classic JRPG where you sort of need to min-max your characters to then go and fight some insane optional bosses near the end, I didn't complete any of these because I was more or less here for the story, although I did enjoy the combat all the way through to the end, but the biggest draw of the game was not the combat for me. The story just meant so much more, so completing the world bosses just felt like I was going to take too much time for minimal payoff. As most of my recent reviews have also been going, either we're going to talk a lot about the story or not much at all, where we will be talking about most of the plot points of the entire main story. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. When we first start the game, we're met with a distorted and destroyed version of what seems to be Paris, France, with a broken and twisted Eiffel Tower right in the center of the city. Also, some sort of magic is on display where rocks are floating in the sky and other anomalies shown in the first few seconds of the game. We're then met with a man staring off into the distance at a monolith adorned with the number 34. This is our main dude, Gustav. He's pretty important to the story, along with the next character who walks up and joins him, and her name is Maëlle. She also goes by Alicia, but we'll get into that more later. She starts off by saying something that hits the nail on the head for how the story feels and the setup of emotions that you're about to experience. If you're gonna give someone a flower, you should probably do it before they wither and die. Which Gustav responds with, the flower or Sophie? Which is such a setup for these specific characters that I love. They then laugh this off as a dark but sort of funny joke. The first intro section of the game that occurs right after this is the tutorial, but it also has a majority of the story setup, doing a compelling job of showing you the world that they reside in, also what is at risk moving forward. As you learn about the festival, expeditions, and the beauty of the world, yes, it is a bit run down, it's not in perfect form, but it is still gorgeous. Flowers in abundance, flags, and other celebratory ornaments are strewn about. There are things floating in the sky above the city, and ice-like crystals protruding from the ground. We don't ever learn specifics of these magical mysteries, but what we do learn is that it's part of something greater, and that greater thing is the Gamage and the end of the world. Speaking to the people of the city, young and old, we start to realize that by old we don't mean traditionally old. Everyone is on the rather young side of things. No one has gray hair or wrinkles, yet there are children running around. This is due to a festival, or what I mean is what the festival represents. This is a day of death. The monolith shown in the distance is not a sight of beauty, but of dread. Sitting at the bottom of this monolith is a giant woman known as the Paintress, who we see come to life. She stands up and erases the number 34 written on the face of this giant structure behind her. She then writes a new number. 33 is then written upon it this time, and at the moment that she finishes writing it, everyone above the age of 33 turns to dust in a matter of seconds. This festival, this ritualistic funeral, is not to behold the beauty that is life, but the means of coping with death. Everyone within the city gathers at this event to watch their loved ones get Thanos snapped into oblivion, understanding that one day it'll be their turn, and twice as fast as they realize. Because of course every year the Paintress counts down and writes this descending number onto the monolith, but of course you age as well, meaning that you are growing older and ever closer to this number. So every year is more like 2 years. 33 is written upon the stone this time, but if you're 31, you've only got a year left, because time doesn't slow down for anyone, for you or for the Paintress. She will write that next number, and this will lead to deaths. And one day, your number will be up, whether you're ready for it or not. The Gamage and its effects are presented through conversations with other townsfolk and directly through the conversations and emotions displayed by Gustav, Sophie, and Maëlle. Gustav and Sophie had a previously complicated relationship where she chose not to have children or go on an expedition before her time came. While it seems Gustav might have had opposing feelings on this, Sophie is ready for the end, having coped with her decisions but nonetheless sad, because she is still leaving her loved ones behind, just trying her best to live her life to the fullest before the final day arrives. And in her case, it just so happens to be today. They hold on to each other in their final moments, while the beautiful score in the background makes you, as the player, know exactly how Gustav and Sophie feel. Then, she's gone. Forcing emotions and thoughts to be pushed to the side, they begin readying for the next expedition, which seemingly has an impossible goal. These expeditions, as the name implies, and as we learn in the opening few hours, are groups of people usually consisting of those facing death in the coming year. But sometimes, they're also people who just want to help prior to their time coming to a close, such as Maëlle, who is only 16. These groups of people set off to the continent far away from the city. Many expeditions have left on this adventure before, and none have returned. The goal is, stop the Paintress from counting down any further. Stop the Gamage, stop the pain and suffering, and stop the feeling of loss that is inevitable with each death. Some people choose not to adventure to this continent and go on this expedition and merely live out the rest of their days with their loved ones within the city. But those hoping to prevent further despair, they set out on boats seemingly to never return. Now, before we set off and we're preparing, we learn a bit more about these characters, their role in the expedition, and how they connect to our characters and the others within the city. Then, once we're ready and well prepared, we make our way to our possible doom. As the multiple boats arrive on this new land, they are met by an old man, which surprises us, of course, because everyone above the age of 33 has just been wiped off the planet, as far as we know. But this man is old, he has gray hair and wrinkles. The moment we notice these features across his face, though, he raises his cane in his hand and begins striking us down, one by one, killing the majority of the expedition in very quick succession. And as much as we prepared, and as much as we learned about these people forsaking their future to get on this boat to attempt the impossible, they now all lay on this beach, dead, right in front of us. Hit with the reality of whoever this man is and why he's choosing to kill everyone that we know, Gustav goes into a state of shock. Unable to understand the events unfolding in front of him, he and everyone else knew this mission would be tough or lead to their deaths. But maybe just not so soon, and not without taking a single step toward accomplishing their mission. As magic and creatures are shown all around the battlefield, Gustav is then struck by some sort of magic. He then passes out, awakening in a sort of tranquil field next to a waterfall, away from the death that he just laid his eyes upon just moments before. As he awakens, he gets up and begins moving down the path, fighting smaller creatures, and as we progress, things start to get darker in tone. We then arrive upon a cave where we find hundreds, if not thousands, of dead bodies strewn across this darkly lit cave covered in blood-red light. These bodies are stacked across the floor and the walls. They're expeditioners, the ones who came before. Gustav then realizes how futile their mission truly was, how coming to this continent was only sentencing everyone to death with no hope of saving anyone, including themselves. He sits down, pulls out his pistol, points it at his temple, and reflects for a final time on the events leading to this moment. As he's ready to pull the trigger, the screen goes black. And well, instead of hearing a bang, he hears a woman's voice. It's Lune, who says if he does that, then they'll both die because they really need each other to survive here. She can't keep going without his help, the same way that he was ready to give it all up thinking that everyone else was dead and had no survivors. Although Lune has her head on a bit more straight compared to Gustav, she convinces him to keep moving forward since their mission is still vital to anyone and everyone else that's left alive. A creature then arrives who we begin fighting, where we learn more about the synergies of combat with different characters. This isn't the first time we've experienced combat though. Back in the city, there were small moments with the tutorial to do so, but we'll talk more about that in a bit. This section is for the story, but I want to mention it here because it does tie back to the idea of gaining a new party member. Learning their strengths and weaknesses, but tying that to their personality and other traits as a person. Lune uses magic only, and as a newly formed group with the two of us, we dispatch our foe and keep moving forward. It is about all they can do at this point. By moving forward and attempting to find other survivors, they work their way to the paintress. We travel through some absolutely gorgeous zones, fighting a few creatures along the way, but stumbling onto one that is not an enemy, but a friendly. These creatures of the land are called Nevrons, and this is the first time that we realize that some of them are not hostile. Gustav finds a journal from a previous expedition lying next to it. They speak about how laying a trail for the ones who came after is vital to their overall mission, how they were able to communicate with this very specific Nevron, but also how they realized the Gamage does not affect the previous expeditioners that lie dead around him. Their bodies were turned to stone upon death and not turned to dust. These journals are found during the entire time while playing the game, and if you wish to discover them, you can find them off the beaten path. They give you a bit of insight into previous expeditions, maybe what some of them were able to learn about this continent, or anything else during their journey. Sometimes only getting a snippet of the people and nothing necessarily vital, but this Nevron then explains that the paintress is not trying to harm anyone, but just trying to help people, if anything. I also realize now that I never went back to this Nevron to see if he had anything else to say or changed it up later in the story, but these are little snippets that you'll get of world building throughout your adventure. That hint to the overall narrative not being quite what it seems, but Gustave and Lune, they decide to keep moving forward, finding another comrade running from an enemy very quickly who is then instantly smashed into a wall and killed. We then begin fighting this creature, and once defeating him, we find a message that was hinting towards Mael's location. She's alive and on the path ahead, but they begin arguing on whether or not they should regroup at the rally point or continue searching ahead for Mael, torn between following the rules placed to keep them safe and the need to find and possibly save other comrades. Gustave says, fuck the protocol. Everyone is dead in the first place by following protocol. He also reminds her that they have a rule to never move solo, always have a partner for backup, forcing her to choose between going to the rally point or following him in his search for Mael. They continue the search into this vast open area that we do get to explore for the first time here. There's massive creatures in the distance, beautiful structures and world that lay in front of us, but we set up a camp. And this is a common place that we'll be able to talk with our party and characters throughout the game, just to learn more about them, reflect on the story and other parts of the world. But anytime that you're at the camp during cutscenes or when you're running around there, the monolith is pretty much always seen in the distance with that striking number 33. The conversation at the camp is not a lighthearted one though, where they sort of hash out their opinions and feelings about landing on the beach and watching the majority of everyone they know get blown to pieces, discussing how they might plan to move forward and how the next step is to find Mael. Everything beyond this is sorta just bullshit, and Lune knows that keeping Gustave on the right path after finding Mael is key to the mission, and it's why they came here in the first place. After having a bit of a heated argument, they come to a slight common ground of understanding that everything is pretty fucked, and they're just gonna try their best to do what they can. It ends with Gustave apologizing. I break it down this way because, for one, it shows how emotions can control you in a given moment, how they have a mission to always move forward and do everything they can to help those who come after, but also how their opinions don't always align. Gustave was ready to end it all, and saving others, starting with Mael, is the only thing that he cares about at this point. He cares too much for those around him and doesn't want to lose more of them. Lune, on the other hand, has experienced loss many times in her life, and she came on this expedition to carve a path for everyone that comes after, or to go ahead and try to accomplish the mission at hand, possibly saving the world from feeling the same pain that she's had to endure. And with this in mind, they go to sleep, ending the night and then starting fresh in the morning, coming into a very gorgeous landscape. Next, through an underwater type level, we fight our way through this until we reach a fancy door nestled in the middle of seemingly nowhere. As we attempt to enter, we are teleported into a mansion interior where we begin exploring this massive home, and we finally come across Mael in one of the rooms. As we enter the room and we find her sitting at a desk, Gustave runs at her, giving her the biggest hug of her entire life, apologizing for not finding her sooner and saying that he's happy to see her safe after what occurred from him watching what happened on the beach. This relationship with Mael and Gustave is a vital one. Not only is this some sort of younger sister and older brother type relationship, but also for what he means for the future of their mission and goals that they wish to accomplish. Mael joins the party as we continue. Leaving the mansion, they are teleported back to the underwater area, where Mael mentions Norco. He is a small gestural. These are paintbrush-like creatures that are, for the most part, friendly. As most of the monster-looking things within this world are deadly and they attack you on sight, this one and others like him are more likely to have a conversation and trade with you. Now, before moving on from here, I'm going to spend the next part of the story explanation on about 2 times speed, because there are a ton of nuances, character moments, and pivotal scenes that I would love to just digest, but this video would be 3 hours long. So moving forward, I'm gonna mention the important stuff as we go, but I'm gonna skip the otherwise smaller parts like Norco, so let's continue the story for now. Norco tells us to stop by his village and talk to the chief, who might know a way to reach the paintress. Because although we are on the continent where we can find her, she is on a different island to the north of where we currently are. With the only way of reaching her by boat or crossing the water, all of our boats were destroyed upon arriving here. We gotta find another means to reach her. We defeat the final boss of this zone, but as we do so, Mael mentions the monster feeling familiar. We experience one of the nightmares that Mael has on occasion when we are sitting back at the camp, portraying more death and dismay on the path ahead. Following this, Mael and Gustav have a heartfelt moment while chatting. We arrive at the Gestural village where it seems that they have a giant arena in the middle of it. They always seem to have a perpetual tournament to showcase their strengths, but the village leader tells us the best bet to cross the sea is with Eskie, who of course is my favorite character, but he can take us right across the water easily. But she will only tell us his location, which happens to be pretty close by, but also the passcode required to reach him if we prove our strength in the arena. Because as strong as Eskie is, he is also very friendly and sorta dumb. We have to apparently prove that we're strong enough to survive when near him, not dying a needless death due to his careless nature, meaning that he pretty much doesn't perform any random actions like just stepping on us and we instantly keel over or something like that, which we come to find out is pretty true for the most part. He is careless and he is kinda dumb, but in a loving way. Although before we fully begin the combat arena, she mentions that a stranger came by and recently put in some work in the arena, and how we should attempt to defeat them before moving forward. We fight a few dudes in the arena that are pretty hilarious, like this one dude that fakes you out by his name being something with like a big foot and then he punches you in the face. Really dumb. But we find this stranger and then they're dressed as an expeditioner when they jump down into the arena to fight us. She's being celebrated as the current champion who is about to take us on as her own challenge. Once we realize that it's actually just our friend, CL, we decide to have a friendly little duel just for the hell of it. After fighting her, she tells us she ended up washed up near the village upon awakening after the boats and the beach incident. She was met with a Gestural who just took her right to the village, and she just kinda started fighting because she didn't really have anything else. Once we leave the village, she begins explaining that she thought she was the only survivor and began fighting because, well, it seemed fun and she thought there was quite literally nothing else to do with her free time. She knew that she was gonna die and something would happen, and she thought that everyone else was already dead from the attack on the beach. And as we do after we gain any character or we complete any larger event, we arrive back at the camp, which is sorta our little gathering area where we have little conversations and chats with characters about the current events or about what's happened up to that point. Mael continues to have these nightmares that seem more like a waking dream, where she continues to be traumatized by these white-haired people, including the old man that attacked them upon arrival. He tells her to just go home with her friends and enjoy the final years that they have together. As this vision ends, she's having a full-on panic attack. Gustav tries calming her down, but Lune is very pushy. She wants to get to the bottom of things, asking follow-up questions on what happened, what this dream was, because she wants to know any information that could be vital to them moving forward. Regardless of how Mael might feel in the moment, we need the information more than be concerned about her feelings. All of these small moments showing Gustav thinking with his heart or Lune continuously using her brain and brain alone. Her heart is more or less turned off to those around her and she only views the mission and the current objective. We then arrive at the home of Eskie, who has these special rocks apparently. He wants us to recover them before he decides to help us, which one of them happens to be right next door with his good friend yet arch nemesis Francois. Now just know, I fucking love Eskie. This guy is my dude. He's goofy, funny, massive, down-to-earth, caring, and at the same time, hopeless, and with a childlike nature. Once we recover one of the stones, or rocks, or whatever from his neighbor, he joins us as sorta our vehicle on our journey, allowing us to ride on top of him across the waves. At first, of course, we can run around on land, and then we can swim on his back later on, and then we get the ability to fly, floating in the sky, making our way to these other floating islands or other hard-to-reach places. We retrieve this first stone only to find out that, well, it was actually a fake. The real stone is actually located a little bit north to our current location. Just like every time before, we fight some bad guys on our way through some unique and beautiful environments. As we conquer the big bad at the very end of the zone, we ready ourselves to jump down the cliff onto Eskie's back, which will allow us to continue the journey and head off to the Paintress. But before we do, Gustav and Mael decide to play a little game to see who can throw a rock across the water to get as close to the paintress as possible. You know, harmless fun, right? Turns out this choice would be the turning point in the game, as they both turn around a little bit looking for some good rocks to throw. Out of the smoke behind them comes our gray-haired friend, the old man who killed so many expeditioners on the beach already. Then there's a flash of light, and then blood, covering Mael's face. Gustav has been shot. The pain in his voice and upon his face is like nothing that we've seen. Mael asks him to try and run away, but he knows he has to stay to try to defend her. The other party members have already jumped down the cliff onto Esquier, and they're being distracted by a random enemy that pops up, but also Gustav has to see why this older man continues to attack and try to kill them. Another boss fight begins, but this one is rather pointless. In between blows and dodging and whatever else you try to do here, this man has no words to spare, yet Gustav attempts to reason with him and ask questions, and he is met with complete silence. Mael is trapped in a bubble behind him, and he tries to go all out to stop this man from moving forward. Gustav has had this special mechanical arm that he created for himself, and he strikes down this vile old man with one last shot that he gives everything he has into, only for this man to stand right back up, as if nothing happened. But there's nowhere else for us to go, nothing else that we can do. This is the end, and Gustav knows. He has to try something. So he says the famous words to Mael, "For those who come after," right? And he charges forward to this old man, only to be greeted by death. The man that's standing before them, always unwavering in his attempts to destroy them and stop their mission at all cost. He approaches Mael, and finally he speaks. He explains what he does out of mercy, not cruelty. He attempts to strike her down, only to be stopped by another random stranger who has a random streak of white hair, but otherwise he's still on the younger side of things. This new stranger and the old man, they begin speaking in what seems to be riddles, saying how he's lived more than a lifetime, yet the old man stating that he hasn't had his family for some time. This new stranger tells Mael that he will handle everything, that she can go off to her friends. This stranger continues the conversation with the old man, and at this point, we've experienced the main points of the story, where our characters are going, the death of Gustav, the new companion who joins us, his name is Verso, and he is the white-streaked savior, who is also a man who happens to always know more than he's willing to say. In the next few hours of the game, we learn that Renoir is this older man that's been chasing us down. Now from this point, I'm gonna sort of speed run the main plot points because, well, there's a lot of them. But Verso tells us some lies regarding why Renoir is trying to stop us, because he just wants to live forever. And that's the most gray, like nondescript reason as to why he's actually trying to stop them. But Verso and Renoir were part of the previous expeditions, and once arriving upon this land, they learned that they could live without the Gamage affecting them. And so Renoir wants to take that and never die, so he wants to stop all other expeditions from, well, stopping him and going to kill the Paintress. Now this is partially true because the real reason is due to the Paintress. She is in charge of almost everything here except the Gamage itself. Verso takes the time to explain most of things to us, at least in about as vague sense as possible, because he wants to help us destroy the Paintress, allowing the Gamage to finally end, and allowing everyone and everything to finally be at peace. As we spend the next roughly 2/3 of the game though, learning more about the world, the people who have been living in this continent, Verso and his connection to just about everything, we pick up another party member named Minoko, and just so that you're aware, Esquier and Minoko are Verso's best friends, and they apparently have been for a very long time. They are also very fucking funny, charming, and collectively extremely well written and acted characters. We learn that there is a barrier stopping us from reaching the Paintress, and as we move forward on our quest, we have a bit of a moment where we actually get to confront Renoir again. And this other white-haired girl who's been in some of the flashbacks, or at least the weird waking nightmares that Mael has had. Upon this meeting, we learn that Renoir is actually Verso's father, who he actually cut ties with a long time ago. Verso is hiding so much more than he's leading on, stating that he's told us everything that we need to know. He's telling us the truth, but only what he wants to tell us. Lune says that, of course, this is lying by omission. He should be telling us everything and then allow us to make that decision on our own of what we should move forward with. But Gustav knows, of course, that this is not what's best for their mission and chooses to stay silent for the most part. Because if they knew the actual truth, who knows what choices they might make. More than likely, they wouldn't even follow through with the mission until the end. And Verso, he has a good heart, he's kind, he mimics a lot of the features of Gustav. And although he's not a replacement for him, he is all that we've got. So we take him at his word and we work to destroy the barrier, allowing us to finally confront the Paintress, putting an end to the cruelty of the Gommage. This final zone that we move through to destroy the Paintress, it mimics every zone that we've gone through so far, showing our journey in its own little reflection. Everything that we've done has led to this final moment and this final event. Renoir confronts us a final time where we fight him and defeat him. Then when we do so, the Curator arrives, which is this kind of skeleton ghostly creature that was in the mansion when we first found Mael. He's been at our camp the entire time and helps us upgrade our equipment, but other than that, he really hasn't done anything else in the entire story. The only other thing that he's contributed to was trying to help us destroy the barrier to reach the Paintress. But when the Curator arrives, some curious things are said from Renoir. He mentions this being the only thing that he has left of his son, that it won't bring back his wife and only destroy their final ties together, which of course is very confusing, but the Curator reaches his hand out for Mael and together they place their hands upon Renoir and they basically just banish him to the Shadow Realm, turning him into flower petals similar to the Gommage. A lot of the things said here are confusing. Ciel begins asking questions, curious about the things that Renoir stated right before he got turned to dust. Verso just outright deflects this, always hiding something of course, and we move forward, knowing that our next steps are going to be confronting the Paintress. But as we approach, she has some very concerning things to say. She walks up to us calmly and with care. Everything has been leading to this moment though, and we can tell that something is a bit off. Questions have not been fully answered. People are sometimes speaking in what seems to be riddles, and we start to piece it together that the Curator and the Paintress are husband and wife. The Paintress mentions Verso coming back and returning to her. Along with her seeing Mael, she mentions of a fire and if Verso can truly be there in this moment, or is someone trying to play a trick on her. She then turns to ask Mael about her mask and why her face looks different as she approaches Verso and then attempts to take his arm and ask him to come home. She realizes something is off. The Paintress is saying things that don't really add up, stating that you're not my Verso, with him responding with no. Verso's dead. Again, all very confusing, but the Paintress then becomes enraged by this, stating that the canvas will not be taken from her, then utilizing all of the magic that she can muster to begin what we think is the final boss fight. But of course this is not so. She has multiple phases during this fight that are all equally impressive, but we still overwhelm her with numbers and sheer willpower. Verso then holds her in his arms as she begins fading away. Mael touches her hands with Verso and they lay it upon the Paintress, bringing her life to an end. The ending that they have all worked so hard for, that every expedition prior has died attempting to accomplish. They finally did it. The number on the monolith dissipates. Lune and Ciel are absolutely ecstatic, but the others are not so convinced. Something doesn't quite feel right. Mael and Verso know that something is up, but the party returns to Lumiere, which is their hometown, to rejoice and celebrate their accomplishments, telling all of the townsfolk of their adventures and sadly of the ones who passed away, such as Gustav. Verso sits on the pier and reads from a page, which sort of starts piecing everything together. As this page is read, it speaks of a family and how the family that is known is a mirror to the real one, painted by their mother to stave off grief. This is the final plot point that just punches you right in the fucking gut. This family was created to defend her, to protect the Paintress, because she was the only one protecting, well, everyone. She wasn't the one causing the Gommage, dooming everyone to certain death by a specific age. She was actually preventing it. The only one standing between the door of death and the small amount of time remaining on the clock of life. If the expeditions were successful, it would be doom for them all. In the final words before he drops the letter, it states, "Your mother paints life while your father paints death." He then looks ahead, and another energy source similar to every Gommage before rushes forward and consumes the city, turning everyone left in Lumiere to petals flowing in the wind. No last words, no final thoughts, just gone, without a single moment's notice. Now at this point in time, we have a small flashback to Alicia, who is the real person that is Maëlle. She has scars on her face, but the world and her are full of color. And at this point in time, she doesn't have her long white hair or a mask, but her hair is bright red, just like Maëlle. She's in the mansion that we've been to multiple times, which we learn is actually her home. Her entire family resides there. She walks up and starts talking to her sister, who kind of pieces a lot of the puzzle together for us. The current year in this flashback is currently Monolith Year 49, which is roughly about 15 years before the setting of the game. Both parents are stuck in time, standing before this painting. They are trapped within it, in a stalemate where she is at the top of the mountain and he is below. Neither of them are able to reach each other, and this is speaking about the world within the canvas. That's right, the entire story that you've experienced up to this point is inside of a painting. A world that's brought to life by these magical painters. The mother entered the painting to maintain her view of Verso, her son who passed away in a fire. She refused to allow grief to consume her, and this painting not only has a version of Verso within it, but a vision of him that she can maintain while attempting to prevent her emotions from coming to light. Her husband, on the other hand, and the father of Maëlle, Verso, and another sister named Clair, that's Renoir, who we've come to know as the enemy. He's actually not as he seems. First off, he went right into the painting after her in an attempt to pull her out, but also to destroy the canvas. He wants to destroy the canvas, which forces the grief upon their family and not to just be held back, but also to prevent their family from becoming stagnant and unable to move on. After years have passed though, they're both kind of stuck in this painting and much weaker than they were before. That's where Alicia enters the painting. The mother is the paintress, and the father is the curator. And Maëlle/Alicia is the tipping point for one or the other, allowing her mother to succeed in maintaining the facade or helping her father by moving past it. The mother becoming the paintress, while the father being the curator. Her father created the Gommage in an attempt to slowly whittle down his wife. It's his attempt to destroy the painting, the memories, and the world and people within, which, as I stated before, is what we've experienced this entire time up to this point. But the question is, does he have the right to do so? This world is just as real as all the people within it think it is, and who's to say that it's more or less real than the people outside of it? Who gets to decide that emotions or feelings are specifically valid? Is he right in the opinion that we should just move on? Emotions are meant to be felt. Grief is something we must overcome and not allow it to control us entirely. But yet the memory of their child can be maintained, at least for a period of time, until it either causes her to lose her life in an attempt to retain that facade inside the painting, or completely destroyed and being forced to move on. But that is her choice. And she cares for the people within this world, the world that Verso painted, his friends that he created as a child, Minoko and Esquier, the creatures and the wonders within, and the feeling that each of the people within Lumiere must also be maintained. But which one of them is more important, the people of the real world or the people of the dream, or the people that you deem to be real? It's selfish to think of only your opinion and feelings, to doom everyone else around you to suffer further grief due to your lack of awareness. But it doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make either the paintress or the curator correct. It only makes them two sides of the same coin. Both are bad. They're both pretty shitty. You either have to live with the thought of that lost child or live in a facade to avoid that thought. But moving past this, when that final Gommage happens, Maëlle is killed and Verso remains. But upon this happening, Alicia and Maëlle sort of come together, fusing memories, which include herself in the outside world and the life that she lived in Lumiere. Verso explains that decisions on why the parents made the choices that they made to the newly combined version of Maëlle and Alicia, and also how Verso made the choice to destroy the paintress, forcing everyone and this world to crumble and die. How it will be outright destroyed now that Renoir is free to cleanse the image of his son. The canvas will be gone, but the memories will remain. But yet, Maëlle believes the same idea ideals as her mother, and thinks that everyone within the canvas, including this fake version of herself, Verso, and everyone else, is important. Because to her, she grew up with them in this alternative life. Everyone here has meaning. Regardless of what others think, Mael and Verso then move forward and confront the curator, who actually turns into the real Renoir. Now that he is free from his shackles of being the curator, Mael believes him to side with her due to having a soft spot, and she also hid the canvas from their mother, but Renoir only wants to destroy it, nothing else, causing a rift between them because Renoir understands that it must be destroyed. There are no other options, otherwise it will only cause more pain and more suffering. And as he said it best, for the sake of the living, we must part with the dead. As they continue to argue and Mael disagrees with him, this causes Renoir to become enraged and begins the process of dismantling the world around them. Mael saves Verso from being destroyed and turned into petals, and they escape with Esquier and Monoko, who somehow they have survived up until this point. I don't truly know, maybe because they're creatures and not people, who knows. But they return to their trusty little camp, where Mael resurrects Ciel and Lune with her special powers. They discuss the betrayal, the lies, and everything else that's happened and been revealed. They plan to bring everyone back to life and live life as if the Gommage never existed, for as long as they can. And Mael will not be able to maintain this forever though, but she wants to try for as long as her body can hold out. Yet Verso still wants it all to end. He mostly keeps this to himself though, because he is sorta torn on what he wants to do. Now, entering the final moments here, there are many side quests that are unlocked upon this point. You can go anywhere and you can do anything, and a ton of the side quests are incredible. There's only one big one that I completed that was for Mael, which was honestly phenomenal. I won't go into extreme detail, but I've got to say that it was one of my favorite parts of the entire game. The end goal is to confront the real Renoir and stop things now. Put a stop to the destruction of the world, and reaching him isn't the easiest task. But once we finish fighting Renoir and we finally get to the end of the game, we are then met with a decision. This entire game, we are shown only one outcome to everything. We've never been given a choice, although we do see both sides of the same coin. We've never had that option to choose. We're only here to experience the story that's been laid out before us, but yet upon defeating Renoir, who by the way has one of the best songs in the entire game when you're fighting him, he tries to reason with them one last time to just put an end to all the suffering and to live in the real world. Help recover what's been lost. His family is fractured, and by destroying the canvas, it brings hope to the future and bringing back everything that they have lost up until this point. They will never fix what's happened. Verso is gone, but by being stuck on it, they'll never even have a chance to be a family again, and every person will remain fractured within their own reality. Renoir only wants to see his family try to be better and happy again. Mael cares for the people in the canvas. They are her family, and she also wants them to be happy. So this is the choice. Once we defeat our father, we can side with Mael to maintain the facade and to live without the pain and suffering until death finds us, or to return to the world outside of the canvas, finally realizing that this is reality and we are forced to return to it, to stop living within this fictional world within a canvas. This is the choice that Verso wants, because he wants the family to be able to move on. This way they can maintain him as a memory and not be stuck in time with people he knows are not real. He also knows that the true family suffers beyond the borders of the painting. Mael wants to watch the people that she cares for within the painting live their lives to the fullest. Also with Verso still alive there, where she is free of the burden of despair and physical ailments of being burned. I've made a video specific to this choice to watch, so go watch it if you want some more opinions on that specific portion of the game, but I chose Verso in the end. It is, in my opinion, the correct choice. The painters who reside in the real world, outside of the canvas, are truly what matters. Regardless of how real or how important those within the painting might feel, they were crafted and created within a world that is not in reality. But this choice takes us to a very specific ending of the game with a funeral for Verso. The entire family there seemingly able to move on, with a bright future mourning the passing of a family member who truly meant the world to them. and then the story ends. This ending, along with the other that you can choose with Mael's perspective, is heart-wrenching. It opens so many ideas and thoughts for you to conclude and discern with its world and characters, yet it also feels conclusive within itself. I felt the ending that I chose was the best one, and a justified choice at that. The story of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is not something that I will forget anytime soon. I'm sorry for the rambling within this, and I wanted to cover pretty much the biggest parts and, in my opinion, most vital component of the game. But let's move on to the biggest part outside of the main story, and that's going to be the gameplay. I'm sure you've heard or seen other people discuss the turn-based combat here and how it has real-time reactions. This is not the first time that it's ever been done, but it is the first time that it's been done this punishingly. Or rewardingly, if you want to look at it that way. I do like the sentiment of comparing it to Sekiro because you gotta parry and you gotta dodge perfectly. Without this, you'll die rather quickly. I played on normal and still got my ass handed to me on the regular. This game focuses on its turn-based combat, but every single character has its own way of doing so. Characters such as Minoko build up his action points to sometimes utilize on some devastating attacks, but they do more if combined with a clock system that's built into his kit. Every move that you do takes AP, which is ability points. The bigger and badder the ability, the more AP that they will take, meaning that you'll sometimes have to save up to get a massive strike onto the enemy. Almost every party member has the ability to build additional AP with very specific attacks, but most of the time you're exhausting this resource, but that's actually where the fun begins. The dodge, parry, and jump mechanic. The jump is party-wide and just negates the damage, but it's used to trip you up. When you're otherwise wanting to parry or dodge, you gotta remember that jump can be thrown into the mix anytime that you see a flashing yellow emblem come up. Dodging is fairly simple. You have a rather large window to evade an attack, and if not timed correctly, you'll still get hit. But if dodged, then you take no damage. Parry, on the other hand, is the most vital of these. It's the same as the dodge for the most part, but the window to complete one successfully is extremely minuscule, meaning you'll have to get that timing down to perfection depending on the attack being swung your way. If successful, you will gain AP and take no damage, and if the enemy has a barrage of attacks and you successfully parry all of them, you can then riposte and deal damage back to your attacker. The best part about this is choosing when and where to dodge or parry. Some attacks don't deal much damage, so dodging can be okay. Others will outright KO your entire party, meaning that you have to dodge or parry it. But if you do parry, you can deal some damage back and open up the enemy to be killed faster. The best defense is a good offense, right? Going back to the different mechanics for different characters though, running through them all quickly here, Minoko has a clock system but also gains new abilities like a blue mage from Final Fantasy, where you kill and then absorb the powers from enemies. Mael has stances where some of them give her more damage or other perks based on her most recently used ability. Lune has this magic that consists of different elements working with or against each other when used in tandem. Sael uses cards that can be used to extend a combo, build up for damage, or pop for a supporting buff. Verso is a bit of an extension of Gustav. They have similar mechanics, the primary difference being Verso gains ranks by avoiding and landing his own attacks. He starts off at D on the low end and then he goes up to an S, and his stronger abilities require the higher ranks to be able to pull off, but they also do so much more damage and provide greater support as well. My main characters that I chose, because you can only have 3 of them, were Verso, CL, and then I sort of interchanged Mael and Minoko for the most part. Sorry Lune, you were cool, I just didn't really like your combat that much, and that's really it, to be honest with you. Working similar to most turn-based RPGs where you have specific turn orders, which can change if specific actions cause it to do so. You'll know when and where the best time to strike is, and a lot of people praise this combat system. And honestly, I feel it's a bit of an extension from Persona, but with the active combat elements seen in other games. A recent notable one that I like to compare is Sea of Stars, because for one, I fucking love that game. But it's also very relatable on the dodging attacks and also enhancing your own with active button presses. The main difference is the timing and requirement to be skilled at these button presses. In most games, they aren't required, but can enhance your play. In Expedition 33, they are required. You won't survive if you don't learn to dodge, parry, and jump on a regular basis throughout all of combat. Enemies can be brutal, but in a satisfying way. Beyond combat, you run around in third person, mostly in a linear fashion during every dungeon, but the game is open once you're in the overworld. There are also some jumping portions that are mostly simple for the main story, where you will need to just grapple up a ledge or drop down somewhere. There's also a grappling hook thing that never really does anything special, but it gives the movement a little bit of splash here and there, so it's not just so boring running around. There are side missions that have jumping puzzles though. Prior to playing this game, I heard some horror stories about them, where people were just spending hours and couldn't finish it. So because of that, I came into it actively searching for them, because I am a fucking sicko who loves jumping puzzles in games. I do it in MMOs that I play and any other game where movement isn't really meant to be used in this way, but each of the ones here were very fun but rather short. We'll talk a bit more about side missions in a moment, but since the gameplay consisted of either running around, entering and fighting in combat, and then this random parkour, I did want to mention it. There's also one thing that I almost forgot to mention: you can initiate and get an advantage ahead of combat. When you're running around in the open world or in these dungeons, you can strike an enemy, which allows you to start off with the advantage. But if they do it to you, then of course they get the advantage. So be sure to use the ranged stun attack before you start running up to an enemy and attack it properly. But as I was talking about with the movement and the jumping around, it's very simple and bare bones, which is what I expect from a turn-based RPG such as this. But these extra areas were a bit of a delight that I enjoyed running across on occasion. So honestly, thank you for throwing these in there. More games should have small distractions like this. Now let's have that chat about some of the side quests. From what I've heard regarding these, they're pretty expansive and give some amazing resources. They give you specific pictos that can more or less break your game. Also gleaning more details about characters' backstories, allowing you to expand your relationships with them. I only completed my L side story just due to the length of the entire game starting to wear on me. As I always have other games that I want to play, I'm usually the type of person that will only go through and do side content after the main story if it's not that expansive, but yet it's still really fun, or if it gives you some sort of game-breaking item or cosmetic that's really interesting. Expedition 33 apparently does all of this, but for me, it just felt like a bit of a chore to reach these and accomplish them in the way that it was asking me to, because I actually had to grind for a bit in the later half of the game, because prior to that I was kind of mowing through everything in front of me, but then I hit a bit of a wall. I couldn't complete these side quests then because the map wasn't fully open, and then on top of that, I wasn't high enough level for these zones anyways. It was a bit of a bummer, but since I haven't done a majority of the side quests, I'll leave my thoughts at that and we'll go ahead and move on. Now diving a bit deeper into the progression for this section, we talked about the basics of combat, but just like most turn-based RPGs, your characters can level up. They gain new abilities within a skill tree by doing so. You can equip stronger and stronger items as you progress through the game. You can also equip perks that can be pretty game-changing in some cases. Picto system is a fun way to add in game-breaking combinations, but some of them have some drawbacks as well. You can also learn them to equip them separately after you have utilized them for a while, but the skill tree for each character is pretty straightforward. The further you get into the skill tree, the more that it's going to cost to unlock that ability. Although each one is more devastating than the last, you give your characters passive skill points as well that can be respect, but these also feed into your weapon choice. Whether you're focusing on defense, agility, vitality, luck, or might. Might is the only one that doesn't contribute directly to gear and only increases your overall damage. Comparatively though, if you have a weapon that gears specifically toward defense, you'll be more powerful if you focus on that attribute. It gives you a lot of choice on how you want your characters to feel. Also how they can contribute to combat. I had my Verso as a pretty tanky boy, while all of the other characters are pretty much focused on just damage and speed, allowing Verso to sort of survive anything and resurrect anyone who's fallen in battle. Your weapons can also be upgraded, and when they reach specific levels at breakpoints, they gain new perks and abilities to aid you even further. So saving resources for a specific weapon that you want to upgrade can be vital to progression. There are also in-game weapons for characters that cause them to basically be unstoppable. But again, remember, how you build out your characters is up to you. If you want to break the game, then you can, but it's not required. I didn't do this at any point. I kept to a more basic combat approach and didn't experiment a ton. I knew that I could because I had a friend that was playing the game at the same time I was, and at some points I thought that I might go for it, but I honestly enjoyed what I was doing. And why change a good thing, right? You also get some very basic consumables for your ability points, healing, and resurrecting other characters. These are replenished at save points that almost act like bonfires in Dark Souls. They resurrect enemies, allowing you to continue fighting them for infinite XP gains or trial and error. When you're in combat, enemies can also inflict status effects that can dramatically alter fights. Similar to Pokemon in Persona, you have Stun, Charm, Dizzy, and Silence. And those are all pretty normal and do what you might think that they do, but then they got some fancy ones. And these are Curse, Mark, Inverted, Exhausted, or Bound. Curse means that you just outright die in a few turns. Marking allows you to do 50% extra damage on your next attack. Inverted means that when you heal, you take damage, and when you take damage, you heal. Exhausted means that you can't gain any more action points, which fucking sucks, meaning that you're stuck just auto-attacking the entire time. And the last one mentioned, Bound, is a rough one, because you can't dodge a fucking thing anymore, and this is vital to combat. You are supposed to dodge, parry, or jump over attacks every single time that they come at you. So if you can't do this anymore, you're pretty much fucking dead. There are other status effects, of course, but these are the majority of the ones that I want to talk about here. They do change up combat scenarios with enemies that use different combinations of these statuses. You can also sometimes inflict these as well, but far less often compared to your foes that can do it upon you. And the further you progress in the game, the more that they whip these dudes out, causing you to go, oh shit, anytime one of them pops up randomly. Also, the comparison to Pokemon is about the elemental weaknesses. Attacking a weakness does some great damage, and attacking one they're strong against will do minimal damage instead. But you get the gist. Let's talk about the world and graphics now. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is very French. As you can tell right off the bat with the music and environments, the Eiffel Tower shown in the first couple of seconds, the red and white striped shirts adorned with a baguette strapped to your back. These are optional outfits, but still, most characters have some sort of European accent, but you get the vibes. French is the name of the game, but outside of this initial setting and the idea of the world, the magic has distorted everything, causing these beautiful environments and creatures. Some of the monsters are massive dragons or rock-like beasts. Others are these little guys, all unique and gorgeous. Throughout my entire time playing Expedition 33, I was met with new enemy designs until the very end. Not only is the enemy design varied, so are each of the zones that you visit, from an underworld-looking dystopia to a sand and cloth-covered temple, then to a destroyed town with massive glowing swords protruding from the ground, maybe a battlefield with thousands and thousands of dead bodies. All unique, and boy did they keep me engaged. Every corner I turned, I was looking out onto the horizon or peeking around to the smallest of details. This game is meant to look like a painterly art style, and it's represented beautifully. The characters perform acrobatic feats while whipping around magical sparks, and almost distorting the world around them as the impacts land on either your party or the foes that lie before them. The character designs are a bit exaggerated but fully detailed, with a little bit larger head and eyes, but only slightly. I also want to mention here that there are some slight environmental puzzles to open up a chest that require a bit of looking around, making the search fun in the design of these zones. Although they're still pretty linear for the most part, you can go off the beaten path ever so slightly, and then usually just return to keep moving forward. But I love the stylization of Expedition 33. I'm so tired of seeing just a basic realism or the new hotness of what I like to call the Genshin Impact style. There are a ton of games using this, and it can be okay, or sometimes the realism can be put in an artistic way, such as Death Stranding or Remedy with Control and Alan Wake 2. Ultra realism can be artistic, but it's as long as you want it to. But the developers of Clair Obscur seemingly took the idea of that, saying, hey, we want it to seem realistic, but at the same time, it's a painting. Things are colorful, but sometimes smeary and not perfectly proportioned, and I love it. The last big section before we get to some of the smaller points is gonna be the score and the audio. I mean, come on, holy shit. What can I not say about the music of this game? Unlike anything that I've ever heard in literally my entire life. I constantly keep the soundtrack on in the background of my home, even when just cleaning or doing anything around the house. It's beautiful across all of its tracks, each zone has a distinct vibe and feeling to it, enemies make little noises, weapons make beautiful clings and clangs and clashes, along with environmental sounds bringing the world to life. But the actual songs themselves, the emotions come through every note and every lyric being sung out. I fucking love the music of this game. There's no other words for it. Go listen to it. I've had it playing in the background of this video the entire time, so if you've liked any of it, I beg you, go and slap it on your playlist. Put that bitch on repeat and just feel things. The voice acting here is also pretty incredible. The characters come to life. Of course, there's some pretty big stars here like Ben Starr, Charlie Cox, Jennifer English, and fucking Andy Serkis, I guess. There's others as well, of course, but these are just the names that stick out at me when I first take a glance. But I genuinely feel like the game would be lesser if not voice acted so well by these individuals. A game can be great without voice acting, but sometimes the voice acting can take it up a notch, as we know from recent games like Baldur's Gate 3 and so on. Alright, let's go ahead and speed run some of these last points, otherwise I'll be here for another hour. A lot of people dislike the fact that there is no minimap in the dungeon areas, but I don't mind this. It forces you to look around and use your fucking eyeballs. Not requiring a map to tell you the inner workings of every single zone, the UI itself is presented stylishly and unique. The main menu is easy to read along with anything else shown in combat. It's not easy to accomplish legibility while also being extremely pretty to look at, but I feel they pulled this off very well. There is an overworld map that is mostly simple, and I'm cool with this being the only map in the game. The game is not that long or complicated. The only small gripe that I have is that if you have completed everything within a dungeon or zone or something like that, then maybe it would give you just like a little check mark next to it on that big map. And if you really wanted, there might be a setting to show you more details like the total number of chests or how many that you might have missed. This would be a quality of life thing for people, but I don't think it's vital to the game. Just something to consider for a future update or for the next game. The menus can be a little bit convoluted, and you can truly spend a large amount of time in them for build crafting and reading through all of the fine print for abilities and items. It's not the most fun that you'll have in a menu, but it is serviceable. I also did this really dumb thing that I want to mention here because it is sort of like menu based, but I saved at 33 because I don't fucking know, I'm a goofy guy like that, I guess. Who fucking cares? Anyway, I ran into a few bugs and glitches, but none that were fully game breaking or causing me to fully restart. I fell through the map 2 or 3 times or got stuck on terrain that caused me to reload a recent save, but due to the infrequency of this, it didn't really bother me too much, but it is something to consider, especially when you're playing the game and you just get stuck on a random piece of rubble or fall through the floor a few times. It led to roughly about 5 or 6 different restarts that I had to do. It is something to consider in a roughly 40-ish hour game, but the worst offender that I have to mention here was this loading screen bug that I got. I would get to the main menu after starting the game, select my recent save, and it would just turn to a black screen. Then after roughly 30 seconds, I'd get a fatal error. It just would not load the game. Now I was playing on PC, all drivers updated, game updated, nothing going on there. It just did not want to load. I checked my PC to see if there was something going on with my GPU or whatever else it might be, and there was no problems. And plus I had ran the game fine for hours prior to that, over a few different sessions. But after checking for a few solutions online, someone stated that putting the settings in the main menu before loading your save down to medium or lower solved it for them. And this is actually what worked for me. I don't know if there's some sort of bug for specific hardware on specific settings. I didn't get that deep into it, but I played the game on high settings for about 10 or so hours, and then once I got this bug, I did have to drop it down to medium to even load the game. But once I did this, it would occasionally reset my settings, causing them to be on max or high again after loading the game back up after a day or so, forcing me to go into there and adjust them again. It was a bit annoying, I tell you what, but nothing that I couldn't overcome with some tweaks. I also played the game a few months after release, so most of the initial bugs should have been worked out, but it seems some have lingered and caused me to be slightly annoyed. Nothing that caused it to outright brick my PC or even restart the entire game, or cause me to restart my entire save, but it was enough to be like, damn, gotta restart again. The This sucks. Now it's time to talk about difficulty. Alright, it's a hot topic for some people lately, especially with Silksong and all the other stuff. The idea of difficulty in games seems to be a recurring theme at least one time a year as it gets discussed on the regular. People stating that developers should make options for players, and others think that they should make the game that they intend, and if people can't play it, the game was not intended for them. I kind of get both sides, but I'm more on the side of let people lower or increase the difficulty if they want. There's no harm in this. Easily, one of the best options recently for this is the gun that you get in Another Crab's Treasure that I beat just a bit ago. It's silly and fun options like this can be placed into the game. Or you can even put like some super OP hidden weapon at the start of the game where it's a bit boring if you want to use it, but there it is. And talking specifically about Expedition 33, again, I didn't beat any of the like raid bosses at the end of the game that were probably like level 100 or something like that. This is just mostly the main story quest that I did, and I could think of probably about 4 bosses that gave me a hard time. I did have to sort of bash my head against the wall attempting to dismantle them. The timing needed for the parries and the jumps, and the damage that they did. All of it was pretty overwhelming, including one part where I needed to farm levels for a bit just to get past it, because otherwise there was no way that I could. But I came into this game expecting that. Turn-based games have a bit of difficulty spikes within them. The idea of perfect parry and dodging all the time though, if you miss one, sometimes you're going to be outright dead. This can be a bit daunting. With the options of story, normal, and hard though, I chose normal and found some of the parts to be difficult, yet they weren't impossible. There were a few optional enemies along the main path that were hilariously hard. I remember there was this one guy that would constantly hit you unless you parried all of his attacks in a sequence to then perform a counterattack, and he wouldn't stop hitting you until you did this. I was also a bit lacking in damage though, so even when I managed to parry him and put a stop to his barrage of hits, I could only whittle down his health a little, maybe like a third, meaning that I had to withstand all of his hits over again to complete this. I didn't have to fight this guy, but with the challenge in front of me, I felt that I needed and wanted to, and it took me about an hour. Then once I finally did, you know what happened? I had a big ol' fucking smile, and I went, fuck that guy. And then I moved on. Similar to Dark Souls in those games, it felt good, and that's what I enjoyed here. I have the option to seek what difficulty I want to. Normal enemies didn't pose much of a threat on the regular, sometimes they were a bit tough. Most of the challenge came from the bosses though, which there are plenty of them. They're all extremely unique and fun to dispatch by learning their combat patterns, and I tell you what, you do be doing a lot of dive, duck, dip, dodge during this game. But I enjoyed these quick reaction times and learning the enemies to perform this little dance with them, moving and grooving to whatever beat that they brought to me. Others might find this too difficult, and I totally understand that, but for me, it was a highlight. Alright, let's get to this final part here with the biggest positives and negatives before we wrap up this big ass review. Let's start with the negatives. As I mentioned, the bugs and glitches were very annoying, but they didn't crop up all that often, so it wasn't that bad. Luckily, they only did it in the first half of the game for me as well, so after learning what happened and how to fix it, it didn't really happen much after that. Another small gripe that I have is the progression in combat. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed what they had here, but they did have an opportunity to do just a little bit more. And all it would have been was just extra fun. But what I mean by that is you could allow your characters to maybe work together. They all sort of live in their own little bubbles during combat because they all have their own little systems, which feels a little old school. I don't hate this, but man, they're a close-knit group of people who all train together and are working with this magic and stuff to accomplish this absolutely insane goal. So them learning to use abilities in tandem and work with each other for big combined attacks or something, that would have shaken it up a little bit. This feeds into the progression as well for the choices in the skill tree. You don't really get much of a choice. You'll unlock pretty much everything over time. You can respect this, but as I feel in a lot of games with skill trees, I wish that they were a bit more dynamic and allowed more expression of how I want to play, because over time you'll always unlock the biggest and baddest abilities just like every single other person who plays the game. Overall, you've got just a handful of choices and just go with what fits best. It would have been more fun to play with this instead of just find weapon, upgrade weapon. A Allow us to maybe interchange attributes from them or make drastic adjustments to have fun with it. I mean, it's fucking magic, right? My last gripe is the lip sync and visual weirdness that happens sometimes. The cutscenes, for some reason, can look like they're in 720p and also be extremely smeared across my screen where they're very blurry. Then cutting from this back to normal gameplay, the normal gameplay looks incredible. But going with the lip sync, it's just not good. I don't know what else to say about this. I pretty much viewed it as a dub instead, and I got over it pretty quickly, but it's genuinely really fucking funny watching their lip flaps close to what's being said, but just never fucking right. But now on to the positives. I mean, have I not glazed this game enough? You're right, I haven't. Okay, so the voice acting. Like I said, the lip flaps were messed up, but I fucking love the good voice acting in this game. It's weird, because we've gotten to a point in games where most games have really good voice acting. There's not that many that have mediocre or even bad actors. And when they are bad, we notice them extremely quickly, because these actors have gotten to a point that they've kind of perfected their craft. But going on to the graphics in the world, some of the most unique and interesting enemy designs that I have ever seen in a video game. Do I enjoy killing a slime or other monsters when I see them? Sure. And in most games, you'll fight a few of them. But in this one, I'm fighting a giant hand monster with beams of light coming out of it? Fucking yeah. There's so many other random yet amazing enemy designs within this game, and I love it. It's so unique, so interesting. And I also enjoyed finding new ones that piqued my interest on what combat style that they would have once I began fighting them. This goes on to the world and its painterly magical styling. As I said a few paragraphs ago, I can't stand basic ass art styles anymore. Give me something fresh or new, or just do it really fucking well. Expedition 33 does everything on its own accord, especially with the idea of art. And I almost forgot to mention the music, of course. So much of it is all just incredible. And then the biggest, most positive thing about this entire game is the fucking story, man. I almost cannot stop thinking about it, and whenever I do remember something, I'm like, oh yeah, that part makes more sense because of this other thing that happened. And then I'm just reflecting on it for days. I'm thinking about the things that they said or things that was not said specifically for story reasons. Now, even though the overall story was a bit of a downer, a lot of the characters are cheerful, fun, and enjoy themselves on this adventure. And that's what makes them seem so real. But I think that's about enough chatting about this game. Let's go ahead and bring this review to a close. Man, was this a big goddamn review. I do not have a large YouTube channel. I spend a lot of time playing these games, writing scripts, editing videos, etc. I do it for the love of the game. But this one in particular, I just love the game. It's taken a while to get this review out because I thought that I wanted to do something a little bit different, but instead I just wanted to make a little bit of a smaller video that I already put out and then put out a traditional review afterwards. But I genuinely think Expedition 33 showed us that there are still incredible and fun games out there to be made, led with passion and excitement. And with those two things at the forefront, you can almost never go wrong. The small team that worked on this did an outstanding job. I'm so happy to have taken the time to experience this game and the story that they've told. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen, and I hope they continue to make incredible art pieces such as this. They deserve all of the kudos coming their way, because playing through this game, it taught me that it's more about the people surrounding you and the ones that you have left, and spending what little time you might have on this planet with those people. But with that in mind, that will be the end of this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Do all that fun YouTube stuff if you made it to the very end here, and I will see you next time.